Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment, for the Logitech G935 wireless gaming headset. Now, if you didn't notice, it is in the center, priced at $170 US. I have been using this gaming headset for the last month and change, and it is very good. For those of you curious out of the gate, is it better than the 933 to its right? The answer is yes. The larger drivers do create I would say a more dynamic soundstage, but to what degree? Is it worth upgrading? That's something I'll touch on through the course of this video. Its microphone also has been improved over its predecessor, the 933 that I have to the right. They've also changed the material. We've gone from fabric to a leatherette. That's purely a matter of personal preference. Otherwise, the 933s and the 935 in the center pretty much identical in terms of fit and finish. It's all about, again, those upgraded drivers, upgraded microphone. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that the receiver that you can see right here, this is for the, let's see if I can get into focus, for the 935, does not have the 3.5 millimeter jack, the line in, that would allow the previous generation, the 933, to essentially make anything a wireless source for your headset. So if you wanted to hook it up to TV, anything that could take, had a 3.5 millimeter line out, the 933s could be wireless headphones for that. Unfortunately, with the 935, for some reason, we took a step backwards and they decided to omit that feature. So that is something I am not happy with. If you're wondering, the Astro A50s are to the left. That has been my daily driver. I've used all of these in the past. I've reviewed the 933s. They're a solid wireless gaming headset. In fact, I think a great value at this point. Even though they're relatively old, they're still very, very good. Do they have issues? Did they have issues over the course of their lifespan that were continuously being addressed, or sometimes not, by Logitech with firmware? Of course. Dropouts, issues of that nature, popping, charging issues, all of those have been, for the most part, resolved here with the 935, and that I do like. Dropouts do still occasionally happen, so bear that in mind. Now, the Astro A50s, $300 retail price tag, they're not new. They've been on the market for a while. Logitech has acquired Astro, for those of you unfamiliar with that. So the Astros, even though they're my daily driver, it's just out of, personal use, and it's what I prefer to use. The battery is built in there. I don't find it to necessarily be superior in any way other than, for me personally, comfort over the Logitech G935s. So let's focus on the 935s and the 933s. Now, in terms of design, I told you, fairly identical. You can see that immediately, even though I've got two different colors here. I've got the Arctic white, the buttons, I'm going to flip these around. In the exact same orientation, you've got, as you can see right here, your power switch, and then all of your customizable G keys, volume rocker, and then at the bottom, you have your I/O, so essentially a micro USB for charging, as well as a 3.5 millimeter line in. And that's pretty much it. Both of these do have RGB. The Astro A50s that I was just showing do not. I think the RGB is essentially a total waste. I mean, there's not really anything to say about it. I mean, if you want RGB, you've got it. Otherwise, all it does is drain your battery life. Do bear in mind, though, that the G-Hub software will permit you, if it is of interest, to sync this with your other Logitech peripherals. So whether you have a keyboard, or their RGB speakers, like I do, then you can sync this up and have one uniform color scheme across all of your peripherals, which is nice, but you can't see this, so it's kind of pointless. All it does is literally drain battery. It also has the ability within the G-Hub software, which I'm not showing you in this video, to essentially try to subsample what's on screen and match the color of the headset to the content. You can, choose whether you want it to cycle RGB colors or whether or not you want it to breathe, different patterns. This is all stuff that really isn't new. The microphone I mentioned has improved. Still the same function of that when you lower it, it is unmuted. When you raise it, it mutes. And you can see the red light right there. It's muted. I do like that feature. My Astro A50 is a little wonky in that department, but all things aside, I'm still not dumping it for the 935s we're looking at here. Still have the same flexibility extension on the microphone that the 933s have. And this is what really brings me to my ultimate conclusion. The 935s are better than the 933s, no question. In fact, you can easily make the argument these are the best sounding headphones on the market. Are they the most comfortable? No. I find my my old Astro A50s that I had to pick up, again, much more expensive, but still relevant, to be more comfortable than either of these. I had the 933, of course, as I mentioned, reviewed it. Unfortunately, it was destroyed. These are my fiance's, and still a very solid headset. And this is where things get interesting. In my opinion, with the pricing being relatively soft on the 933s, I mean, there's the area to stow the USB key. It's on her computer right now. The removable battery, which is exactly the same in the new 935, which, by the way, I do think is a good thing. Unlike the Astro, when the battery dies on that, I'm going to have to ship it in or buy a new headset. Whereas here, the battery is easily going to be replaced. That is something I do prefer about the Logitechs. But when it comes to pricing, the performance is so similar that even though the 935 does outperform the 933, as I mentioned, also taking into account that we've lost the 3.5 millimeter input jack on the wireless receiver, I don't know that I can really recommend this because it's $170. This is $100, and that's without the 933s being on sale. For all I know, come Black Friday or even with regular sales, because of the 935 now being out to market, you might be able to find this for $70. Who knows? $75 may be the new pricing for the 933. Now, I know it's sitting at $100 right now, but even at $100 versus $170, it's very hard for me to tell anyone that the improvements we got out of the 935 are worth that $70 difference. So my breadth of experience in terms of the 933, the 935, and of course the A50. I'm not going back, any more than that in terms of wireless gaming headsets. I've been using them for a long time. But it's something where while the 935 may garner the best audio performance overall, it does not justify the price difference between these two models, especially with the loss of this feature, the 3.5 line, because that 3.5 line really allowed you to use the 933s, and it still does if you pick them up, to make any source wireless, which I think is valuable to people and is not something they should have dumped. Maybe that gave some of the connection dropout issues with having a line-in receiver there. I have no idea why Logitech dumped it, but they did. And in doing so, they took what could have been an improvement in just about every way other than design away from the 935. And I just don't understand it. But otherwise, 935 does outperform it, again, in terms of the drivers and soundstage, but not by enough to justify or warrant its pricing. And the only other thing that's noticeable here, again, ear cups, mesh versus leatherette. That's totally a matter of personal preference. I think this gets gross a lot quicker after all these things sit on our ears. I don't care how much you clean your ears. It's inherent that this is going to look shiny and gross. Both are going to get gross, but I think you all know where I'm going with this. And the 935s, the microphone's a little bit better. Still not enough that if you want to, stream or have an audience, you will need a dedicated microphone. So it's all a matter of personal use, need, and preference. In my opinion, save your money, get the 933s. I'm not even going to tell you to go out and get the Astro A50s because, quite frankly, they should be updated by now. But this video is all about the 935. So solid headset. I don't think it's overpriced, but when you bring in that comparison of the 933, that's where things get a little bit tricky. And that's why I addressed it today. Even though this was a full review, it was also a comparison because I think both are practical and I think valuable when trying to decide where that money's going to go. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.